Hello, colorists. Today we're playing with a color palette catalog that was sent to me by Sarah Renae Clark. Thank you, Sarah. And I thought it would be just perfect for finding palettes for our coloring pages. Because I don't know about you, but color combos and palettes are still the number one thing that I struggle with, even agonize over sometimes. So anything that prompts me or helps me out in that way, I'm all about it. So stick around and we'll check out this baby together. So this color catalog was developed by Sarah Renae Clark, and you can check it out at her website at sarahrenaeclark.com, where you too can purchase and download it onto an iPad or other similar device. Now, since I downloaded it onto my iPad, it actually wasn't an app. It went into my iBooks section, since it is interactive, but it doesn't quite work like an app. You can swipe between palettes, you can search by colors, keywords, collections. So pretty much anything that strikes your fancy, you can find on this tool. The only thing I can't quite find is the back button. I'm sure I'm just missing it because I'm a noob, but let's say I go into one of the thumbnails here of a color palette to kind of see it up close, but then it wasn't quite what I was looking for, so I want to go back and see another one that was in that same color family. I can't quite figure out how to do that. I can't figure out how to just go back one step. So I just keep kind of going to the home button up here and starting over again, but like I said, I'm sure I'm just missing it. And my favorite thing about this is actually the prompt of that single color. Because there might be a page where I know that I have a clear jumping off point or a color to start with, but I'm not quite sure how I want to build around that color. So this kind of helps out with that, especially with the brighter colors that I tend to struggle with. So the page that I actually want to color today and find a palette for is the companion piece to the merman that we colored a few weeks ago, this mermaid page. And again, I want to find a complementary palette that is similar to the merman page, yet different. So I want them to go together, but not be quite the same. So let's see what we can find. Let's see what's in the keywords section. I haven't really messed around with that too much. Ooh, there's an ocean keyword. That sounds promising for our mermaid page. I'm kind of drawn to these ones here. I'm even drawn to this one. It doesn't remind me of the ocean though, but what it does remind me of is that faber-castell red-violet color that I was loving last week. But this palette's a bit too matchy-matchy for this page, and it doesn't go with our mermaid, so let's move on. Let's search by color. This orchid color is really pretty. Let's try this one. Ooh, I'm very drawn to this one. This one could work. Similar color scheme to Brad, but with some fuchsia thrown in there. We'll have to keep this one in mind. Oh, I didn't even know there's a second page of colors. Wow. Ooh, what's in the tangerine category? I like this one. It looks very vintage. Not at all right for a mermaid, but very, very cool. All right, I can't find the back button, so we're just going to flip through some of these palettes in order, and we'll just kind of see what we can find. This one could work. Kind of reminds me of the other one that we bookmarked. These are all really, really pretty. You know, I also like that she includes the RGB and the CYMK color codes for any of you digital artists out there. These could be quite helpful. All right, I've been flipping through these palettes for about 20 minutes now, and I think this is the winner, that one that we first kind of identified, number 210. I think that this one will complement our merman very, very nicely. So let's find some pencils that go along with this palette. All right, I'm going to use my Prismacolors, my Faber-Castells, and my Crayolas all on this page, so we have lots and lots of colors to choose from. Now, the first block on our palette is kind of a deep, like navy blue, so maybe something in this indigo range. Maybe we could even incorporate or deepen some of those blues with some lovely kind of purpley berry colors too. The next color block is kind of a dark peacock green, and for this one, we might even have to combine some colors to get what we're looking for to match this palette, since I don't have this color straight up. Next is a nice middle tone peacock green, which I think we have some spot on matches for. Then a curveball with this fuchsia color. Now this is the one that I know I'm definitely going to have to play around with and maybe combine some colors to get to this color. And last but not least is a soft sage green, which I know I have some great options for. Oh, and by the way, I'm not just pulling one color for each of these 5. So I'm not using 5 colored pencils. I'm pulling like 3, 4, 5 colors for each color block, trying to vary the tones slightly between them just to kind of get some variation, have some options to play with, since these blocks are just a jumping off point. So we have our colors chosen, but where to put them? That is the next question. I want this page to be a good companion piece to our merman over here, but I don't want it to be just more of the same. So I think I'm going to do her hair in blues and greens, and that way I can easily transition her hair into kind of where it turns into these like watery, kind of bubbly areas. Plus that way she'll kind of be of the same sort of color family species as Brad, but just a little bit different. Then we can color the water background itself in that kind of fuchsia color. I think that would be really a fun twist here. The only thing that I am worried about is that I have a very similar palette in these blues and greens. So if I color every little thing on this page in blues and greens and leave the background just fuchsia, then I'm going to have to be very, very careful to just sort of differentiate all these little bits to just, keep it from turning into a little bit of a mess of shapes. I still want each piece to read very clear, very bright. So just something to be aware of when you're planning out your color palette. The first thing I'm going to do is start with my lightest color, which is pale sage, which will kind of act as our highlight. So I'm just going to place this down in some random areas where I think that the light would be hitting the light underwater. And it's a bit difficult to say exactly what I mean by that, but in this book, because the coloring book artist kind of gives you those fantastic, like deep set shaded areas, it's a little bit easier to tell where to put your light colors. So these Kirby Rosane's books really, really help with that. And I know I'm pronouncing her name wrong, but I can't remember the proper pronunciation, so tell me down in the comments how to say it right, and whether or not Kirby is a her or a him too. Now, after a while, I found it easier to work with all the colors that I was going to use and just hold them in my hand at the same time, and then switch off in between as I went. Now, once her hair was done, I decided to give her tail fluke. Tail fluke? Is that what do you call this like part of the mermaid down here? Leave that down in the comments too if you know. Anyway, I gave her fluke the same treatment as her hair. Same colors, same everything. Now, how are we looking compared to our palette? Pretty good, I'd say. We've used every color here except for that fuchsia so far, and we've actually barely scratched the surface of our page at this point. And remember, I'm saving the fuchsia for the background, so I have to start kind of being really careful with my color placement. Just again, make sure that I'm not just putting down like globs of blue and green everywhere. Otherwise, we're going to kind of lose a lot of this really cool detail. And if you couldn't already tell, I'm going to focus my green tones only on the rest of her tail. Now this will isolate it from the blues that we just did quite a lot of, and it'll also mirror Brad's tail, which was green too. Oh, and you know what we haven't done yet? Oh my gosh, we haven't named her. Brad's girlfriend needs a name. It is mandatory. Now, I asked my daughter what we should name her, and she said Brangelina, so she's no help. I'll tell you what, why don't you guys leave your suggestions down below, and in a few days, I'm going to pick what I think is a really good fit for her, and then I'll post a photo onto my YouTube feed kind of announcing it. So if you have a good name for her, leave it down in the comments. Now, I just have to say, for some odd reason, it was really satisfying to use the light and dark greens here to really highlight her curves. It shouldn't have been this fun, but it really kind of was. Oh, you know what I did not notice? These little dorsal fins that she's got going on here. Now, since I did the tail itself in greens, let's see what it looks like if I focus only my blues here. Man, I really don't want this to get too kind of multicolored just everywhere. Ugh. I think it's looking okay actually. But see, this is the part of the page where everything else is white and everything looks really good. So it's kind of difficult to tell if it's going to look too jumbled once we add color to everything else and the same colors to everything else. But at this point, I just kind of have to cross my fingers and hope for the best. All right, our soon to be named mermaid is looking pretty good. And I think it's time to do the background because once I take stock of how that background looks, I can make some more informed decisions on the rest of like the turtles and the fishies and all the rest of the little things on this page. So as a foundation, I'm going to add in 2 complete layers of that pinky purple fuchsia color. Now the first layer is going to be Mauvulous from Crayola, which is a fantastic color name. Hats off to you for that one, Crayola. And then another complete layer right over top of Orchid, also by Crayola. And the reason that I did this with those particular colors is twofold. First, I didn't have quite the right kind of spot on fuchsia color from our palette. So by combining these two, I was able to come closer to that color. And second, because I used 2 Crayola pencils, which are kind of known to have just a bit less pigment in them than other pencils, I find that layering 2 or more Crayola pencils just kind of goes better together, since less of that pigment means that more color can kind of show through and they complement each other instead of one kind of overpowering the other. And once that is done, you see this veining in the water on Brad's page over here? It's actually going in this direction. And I'm going to take my magenta and I'm going to put in those same lines or that like veining in the water, but I'm going to do the mirror image in the opposite direction so that these pages sort of complement each other so that those veins kind of form like an upside down V towards the center of that page. So it'll kind of work as like a double spread here. Then I'll take Jazzberry Jam, another great color name Crayola, and I'm just going to use this to blend out just some of those harsh lines in the veining there. It'll also add just a little bit more dimension of some color here. And I'm going to blend that background out in a moment, but first I actually want to take a dry cotton swab and blend out our mermaid. And this is just going to soften up some of those transitions just ever so slightly. I'm really liking the dry cotton swab approach lately. Of course, it's right after I bought about 10 packs of colorless blender pencils, but that's okay. I can still like it. Then I'll do the same thing, but this time I'm going to add just a little bit of baby oil, wipe it off on a paper towel, and then just kind of blend out the background in circular strokes. Now, when I originally did this on Brad's page, I had major baby oil regret because it was so wet at first, but it ended up really being a very happy mistake since it dried nice and light, and it's probably my favorite part of that page now. So I love when accidents turn out like that. So I'm going to do the same thing on her to match. And just like we did on Brad, I'm taking my electric eraser and pulling up some of the color in those same kind of veining patterns. Now for my least favorite part, and the part that I've actually been dreading, all these little bits and bobbles and kind of doodads left on the page. And this part, to be honest, I did kind of struggle with, like a little bit, because I left myself with such a limited color palette that I kind of struggled to differentiate and make all these little items stand out on their own. But in the end, and many hours later, here she is, all done. Now, I am very happy with her. My favorite part is definitely her hair. I like how all these colors together turned out, and those are definitely my favorite kind of go-to colors for sure. I also really enjoyed using Sarah Renae Clark's color catalog as a jumping off point for our palette. It's just, shame on me for kind of choosing one that didn't have quite the variation that would be good for our page here. That was definitely my bad. But I am definitely going to use this color catalog again in the future. And, you can always add in kind of your own complementary colors, if you find a palette like this one that you really like, but, maybe it just needs like 1 or 2, additional colors kind of added, just to give you that variation. You can always do that yourself. And again, if you want a color catalog of your own, you can click on the link in the description and check it out for yourself. That is it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. It helps out my channel a ton. Subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to leave your mermaid name suggestion down below in the comments. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you all next time.